Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are focusing on something that feels, I don't know, almost like a modern epidemic, psychological burnout. We've pulled together some really specialized research to give you a definitive shortcut to understanding this draining state.
I mean, let's be honest, modern professional life is just intensifying, right?
Yeah.
Especially in those really high demand fields. Our sources really emphasize the pressure on people like surgeons or top tier tech innovators. The stakes are so high, they're constantly disrupting their physical and psychological balance.
And that's a crucial point. People have always been overworked, sure, but this formal concept of psychological burnout, it really took shape in the late 20th century. And it was first studied in professionals in, say, humanitarian and social services, people who give continuous emotional energy under incredible stress. At its core, burnout is really defined by these negative changes in your attitude and your relationships, all driven by work pressure. But the foundation of it all is just extreme physical and emotional exhaustion, depletion. It's not just being tired, it's like your internal emotional fuel tank is empty. So if that's the destination, our mission today is to map out the journey for you. We really need to answer three questions. How does the state develop? What are its clinical dimensions? And most importantly, what can we actually do to prevent it? So let's start with that trajectory, because the research is crystal clear burnout doesn't just happen one Tuesday afternoon. It's a progression, a slow creep.
Exactly. Researchers Mathewson and Infosivich charted 4 distinct stages. And the first one is, it's almost counterintuitive. It starts with stage 1, immersion or engagement.
Wait, engagement. So you're actually engaged at the start.
You're usually highly motivated, you got high job satisfaction. But, and this is the key, that satisfaction plummets the second that reality fails to match your expectations. The rewards, the impact you thought you'd have, it's not there.
And that's the trigger.
That's the trigger.
Right.
And it leads directly into stage 2, apathy or dullness. This is where that slow decline really starts. Your efficiency drops, your performance suffers, and interestingly, this is where physical health starts to deteriorate too.
Wow, that early on.
Yep. Your attention shifts. You start looking for solace in hobbies, socializing, anything that's not work, creating this emotional distance from your job.
And I imagine that emotional distance just accelerates the damage. Where does it go from there?
It accelerates significantly right into stage 3. Detachment or separation. This is a full-on psychological withdrawal. We start to see serious physical and mental health issues, just pervasive stress.
And the final stage.
Finally, you hit stage 4, the critical stage. This is the extreme phase. The symptoms are severe. We're talking disturbed thought patterns. And it can lead to thoughts of quitting on the spot, or in the most extreme cases, even suicidal ideation. It's a systemic collapse.
To put some, real-world measurement on that, the research also points to Spaniel's 3 levels of severity. So the neutral level is what most of us have felt, right? Short bouts of fatigue, anxiety, frustration, it passes.
It passes. But the moderate level is when those same symptoms stick around for at least 2 weeks. Persistence is the key here.
And that's the turning point, because the severe level is something else entirely.
It is. At the severe level, the symptoms aren't just in your head anymore. They become chronic. They manifest as actual physical diseases. The sources mention things like ulcers, chronic back pain, or these debilitating continuous headaches. It's not a psychological problem anymore. It's a full-body condition.
Okay, so let's get into the clinical language that everyone uses to define this. When you hear organizations or researchers talk about burnout, they're almost always using the model from Maslach and Jackson, the one that gave us the Maslach Burnout Inventory, the MBI. And that model has 3 core dimensions.
It does. The first one is the most obvious, I think. It's emotional or affective exhaustion.
Yeah.
This is that literal draining of your emotional resources. You feel depleted, you lose self-confidence, you start dreading the commute to work, you just feel incapable of giving anymore.
Which leads right into the second dimension, and this one, for me, really hits at the core of why we work in the first place, a lack of personal accomplishment. This is where you start to evaluate yourself negatively. You feel incompetent, unsuccessful, you lose that commitment you had. The source material used this incredible analogy. It said the person feels like they're on a sinking ship being tossed around by the waves, and that image just perfectly captures that loss of control, that hopelessness when you feel like nothing you do matters.
And when you believe your efforts have no outcome, you check out, which directly fuels the third dimension, depersonalization. Or you could call it cynicism.
So this is where you start treating people like objects.
Basically, yes. You lose the human element.
Yeah.
Clients or patients, they become problems to be processed. And this comes out as harshness, pessimism, criticism, even using a lot of technical jargon just to keep people at a distance.
Right, to create a barrier.
Exactly. But what's fascinating here, and the research really highlights this, is that depersonalization is a defense mechanism. It's a shield. In fact, the sources suggest that a moderate amount of it can actually be necessary to perform effectively in really high-stress jobs.
Like an ER doctor or a surgeon.
Precisely. It helps them cope with intense emotional stress. It can reduce that paralyzing guilt or frustration that would otherwise stop them from being able to act.
So if a little bit of that is a defense, let's talk about what pushes people over the edge into full-blown burnout. Ascari and colleagues group the causes into 3 categories. And the first one, well, it was a real aha moment for me.
The subjective and internal factors.
Yes. The sources are so consistent on this point. The people who are the most loyal, the most dedicated, the ones with the strongest drive for success, they are the most susceptible. It's the high achievers who hit the wall the hardest.
It really is a double-edged sword. That high drive means they take failure and systemic problems much more personally.
And those problems often come from the next category, social factors.
Right. We're talking about bureaucratic institutions, rigid policies, things in the workplace structure that literally prevent that high-achieving person from meeting their own expectations. It just creates chronic stress.
And then you have the professional or work factor.
Right. Which tie it all together. It's the failure to achieve clear goals, or the job's inability to satisfy basic needs like validation or stability. It just leads to this corrosive low morale, and that spirals into burnout.
So if we touch on the explanatory theories for a second, behavioral, cognitive, Freudian, what does that really mean for how an organization might try to fix this?
That's a great question because the approach changes completely. If you take the behavioral view, you see burnout as external. It's about workload or the office environment. So the solution is to change the environment.
Okay, makes sense. What about the cognitive theory?
The cognitive theory says burnout is primarily internal. It's about the employee's negative perception of the situation, regardless what's actually happening. So the solution there is to train employees to change their mindset, their internal lens.
And the Freudian perspective.
Well, the Freudian view sees it as a deep internal conflict, a struggle between the id, ego, and superego. So any intervention would be much more intensive, focusing on individual psychological counseling, not changing the office layout.
That really clarifies the different approaches. So, with all that in mind, what does the research offer as practical, multi-level strategies for prevention?
At the personal level, the individual psychophysical strategies are key. Things like engaging in hobbies just to relieve tension. Regular exercise is a big one, not just for physical health, but as a psychological release. Even simple things like deep breathing and, critically, setting realistic goals for yourself.
And not isolating yourself.
Exactly. The interpersonal strategies are all about avoiding isolation, strengthening bonds with colleagues and friends who get it. That shared experience is huge.
Then there are the work-related strategies. How do you fight this inside the job itself?
A lot of it is about breaking the monotony, diversifying your tasks to keep things fresh. The sources even mention using humor and fun as a key intervention, and trying to stay in a state of mental alertness to prevent that slide into apathy.
Which puts a lot of responsibility on the organization.
It does. Which is the final level. Management and organizational strategies. This means using flexible management styles involving employees and decisions, and using both material and moral reinforcement.
You mean like bonuses and praise?
Yes, tangible rewards paired with consistent positive feedback. And offering professional development, which signals to the employee that they have a future there.
It's one thing to talk about this in the abstract, but our source material really brought it home with a case study.
It did. The person in the study was diagnosed with moderate to severe occupational burnout. And you could see all the dimensions: severe emotional changes, total pessimism, constant fatigue, isolation, disturbed sleep, even unexplainable physical pains. And their depersonalization was classic. They were explicitly blaming management and colleagues for everything. It shows you exactly how that exhaustion leads to cynicism.
It's such a powerful example. So we've seen that the most dedicated people are often the most at risk, and that a little bit of that cynicism can sometimes be a necessary shield.
And that balance is maybe the biggest challenge. We know that moderate depersonalization might be necessary to function in some jobs, but we also know a lack of personal accomplishment is a core driver of burnout. So here's the question to think about. How do professionals find that balance? How do you adopt the psychological distance you need to do difficult work without losing the sense of meaning and accomplishment that keeps you going? How do you use the shield without letting it become a cage. At tension, that's definitely something worth considering further.